Yeah, the story developing this morning. The founder of the Johannesburg-based Rhema Bible Church, Pastor Ray McCauley, has passed away. The 75-year-old died at home last night. Known to his congregants as pastor, he had already retired from active church duties. In a statement, the family says further details will be issued later. We go now to Newzroom Afrika's Rhema McCauley joining us live from the Rhema Bible Church in Randburg in Johannesburg. Veronica, good morning to you. Ray McCauley created a church after a career in bodybuilding, and it was a church that came to have huge influence in our society.
Absolutely, Stephen. In fact, Ray McCauley is known for having many faces. One of a prominent religious leader, as you've just mentioned, a former bodybuilder, but also someone who was quite influential in the community, in the Christian community. We are here actually at the Rhema Bible Church. You'd remember he started this church at around 1979 at his parents' home, where at the time there were only just about 13 members. Come to today, this church has a congregation of about 45,000 churchgoers strong, and of course making it one of the biggest churches in Southern Africa. But apart from just his accolades and what he's achieved, many looked to Ray McCauley as a spiritual mentor, but also, as I said, the many faces that he wore was also that of a political influential figure. You'd remember that he was also part of the many church leaders who were part of that transition into democracy for South Africa, who used faith as a way to integrate communities, and of course called on many of the white South Africans at the time to be part of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and in regards to speaking about what they know and understanding how the South African government at the time had changed and one might say the propaganda around that, and used the church as one means to break down those social walls that surrounded us. But to speak a little bit more about what is expected to happen today and the way in which this church will be paying tribute and continuing and honoring the legacy of Pastor Ray McCauley, I am joined by Pastor Wayne Chuff here, who came out very quickly. Thank you so much for your time. Just walk us through, I think most importantly, just how members of the church are feeling, as well as the family. I know that you guys have been engaged in meetings throughout the morning, best trying to figure out how to move forward from this moment, which I can only imagine must be an emotional time.
Yeah, I think, first of all, thank you very much for making time for us. It is a very difficult time for us as a church, as a congregation. And I think speaking on behalf of the family as well as the church, when we learned of Pastor Ray's passing, we convened, we got together, and we had a press release last night. This morning, we've actually spent time with our staff, both our senior pastors, Pastor Joshua McCauley, Pastor Tara McCauley, and their kids are here. We just decided to, before we can actually go out, to spend time as a family. So we shared some stories, prayed together, worshiped together, right here in Fellowship Hall 3, which is on my left. Then from now, we're going to enter into a situation room and begin to plan out what this week is going to look like. Our members are aware of what has transpired, and a lot of condolences and message of sympathy and condolences have been flocking in. And they are waiting for us to release some information on how we're going to mourn and to celebrate a life of a giant. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the life of a giant it is. I think when we were speaking earlier, you said that the way in which you plan to commemorate and honor him is a project called Project Eagle. And you were speaking of him as the fact that the eagle has fallen, such a prominent figure, not just for, the church itself, but I think just for the Christian community at large. His style of preaching was one that a lot of people, of course, took comfort in. When you were sharing those stories, just if you can, just talk to us about who, Ray McCauley was behind the podium, and also as a family man, as a father, as a grandfather, and as a leader.
Pastor Ray, there are two things that defines him. He loved God and he loved people. He loved this country and he loved the people of this country. He stood for many years in places of death and spoke life. Pastor Ray was famous for his words, no perfect people allowed. Everybody is allowed to come to this church. To the very end, he maintained that sentiment. Some of the stories that we get to share is just his I think his determination to be in a space where he's always out to defend those who do not have any defense and stuff like that. And I think as the story unfolds, as the plan unfolds, we'll be able to share some of the stories which will be documented, so that the people can actually know who Pastor Ray was. And we also need to understand that Pastor Ray wasn't created in isolation. He was created as part of the package, humanity. And he's part of that package, and we're going to allow everybody from all walks of life to be able to celebrate him. And that's where we're getting into now.
Yeah. And let's talk a little bit about those plans as well, in terms of how you plan to, of course, honor his legacy. What can we see in terms of, or what can people expect in terms of those tributes, and how they can also be a part of that contribution?
Well, we're going to celebrate him not in one moment, but in different moments, maybe several days. We have a morning period with the church, which we'll be able to share as soon as that information is ready and it's out. I don't want to share prematurely on what the drops and pockets of what we spoke about. We are supposed to be in a meeting now talking about that. And I think maybe after midday, we should have plans and it will be released, yeah.
Right. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Again, our condolences. Speaking, of course, there was Pastor Wayne about the plans in place to honor the legacy of the late Ray McCauley. But speaking also quite emotionally there, Stephen, about who he was and how he, of course, welcomed all people from walks of life, saying that he came as a full package of humanity and welcomed all that came to this church. But, of course, Stephen, it's going to be quite a day. We'll be remaining here to get some of the tributes from people who are expected to arrive here. We know that already we've been hearing from several interfaith-based organizations, as well as the South African Christian Council of Churches, who have basically described Ray McCauley as one of the greatest Christian leaders in the country, and saying that his voice of faith and moral authority will be dearly missed in the country as we continue to face many of those social ills. And you'd remember that voices, preachers like Ray McCauley gave hope to many. Back to you, Stephen.
Veronica McCarty, thank you very much indeed. An important story developing today. Well, we'll bring